Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Church Encourager podcast. It's Doug and Steve here. Today, we're going to be looking at our discussion guide for Kingdom Influence Part 11. We talked about mercifulness, mercy. Is mercifulness a word?
It works. I mean, I know what you mean by it.
You know what I mean. Yeah, I don't know if it's mercy was the correct word and the correct thing to say, but sometimes mercifulness, I think, can be a little like an acting verb. Anyway, that's enough grammar talk for the day. You read the parable of the Good Samaritan, and that's a classic. It's just and there's so much theology packed into it too. It's amazing, what Jesus was able to do with his parables. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, though, as we kind of think about that story, why do you think the priest and Levite passed by on the other side? And then, kind of dovetailing off of that, what might prevent us from showing mercy today?
Yeah, I used to think it was just they were not wanting to get involved, and but the more I thought about it, I mentioned it in the message. Another thing would be that besides that, their rules and regulations would if the person was dead and they touched him,
Mm-hmm.
then they would have a whole nother set of things they had to deal with for themselves. And so there's that, that's sometimes you're just too busy and don't really care. And they had the idea, I think, is that it's very easy for us to sort of lose compassion for folks. And it just feels like, more than we can possibly deal with. So we ignore it and avoid it and try not to see it. And, all that's kind of in the works of what's going on. So it's just easy to say, well, they're just, they don't care at all. But there's a lot going on with that. And then, I think in our own lives and times, we often hear of people who try to help someone and then it turns out it was a scam or it was a trap or it was, it goes badly. And so we live in a very strange time and we have to be aware of all those things and balance them in. And I tried to bring that up too, that, you need to have your discerners on and ask God, is this something I should stop for? Or is this something I should be praying for? And that's obviously a yes, no matter what. And then approach it from that. But yeah, it's not as simple as it used to be because sometimes people will take advantage of people doing the next right thing, and stopping to help and getting involved. And then, but at the same time, that can't be the reason that we never do that.
Right.
So we have to be just engaged. It's one of those things where you really have to press in and I think God is faithful to give us direction when in those situations. Whatever's going on, if we're listening, so that we can kind of trust him to do that. So it's that kind of stuff. There's a balance between there's probably some apathy that gets involved, and then there's maybe some fear that gets involved, and maybe there's some too busy. We have to balance all those things and make sure we are sort of plugged into what the Lord would have us do.
Yeah. I think it's important for us to have those boundaries, right? Because, mercy, it can be different things for different folks. I remember one of the sermons I wrote, we talked about the Good Samaritan and you even pointed out, Jesus is the Good Samaritan in the story. We're innkeepers. And so, innkeepers have to do their job and, they kind of have to manage all that. And, we see the innkeeper, he was presented the opportunity by Jesus himself. And, that's why it's important to have our discerners on. I would say be careful if you ever see an email or a text message saying, Pastor Steve here, I would like $1,000 worth of eBay gift cards because I'm stuck on a cruise ship. So yeah, it happens too often, but if we're ever in a position like that, we're not going to text or email you. So, again, very important to be mindful of those things. And Yeah, I think, I liked what you said. Keep the discerners on. That takes being connected to Holy Spirit and leaning on Him. And that's how do we tell the difference? How am I supposed to respond? And I would say the Lord would make it very clear. Um, at least I pray that He does. Sometimes we're just called to compassion for other things. Like, you know, I couldn't believe I saw it the other day. I'm driving down to Key West and I saw a couple guys hitchhiking. And I'm like, I don't think we need to do that anymore. Public transport is very good in our country. I don't know where it is everywhere else in the world, but we've seen too many movies that say that's not a good idea. It's a very confined space. So, the you can pray, and you said that, and I think that's crucial. And it's not like a last resort. And prayer is only passive if we don't really mean it. I think that's that next step. If we're praying, if we're digging in for this situation, pray hard. So,
Yeah. And I think that's a very reasonable response. I said, don't just toss up a cast off prayer.
right.
You know what I mean? So, and,
Yeah.
and you just said the same. It's funny. You're thinking about hitchhiking. When I was a teenager, we hitchhiked all over the place in the 70s. It was a thing. And
The 70s were like the Wild West compared to the
yeah, yeah.
2020s.
But things started to happen. You started slowly hearing about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we have to be super careful. And yes, and thank you for saying that. We do not send texts and emails asking you to send us, go and get cards from somewhere and scratch off the numbers.
Do not redeem it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't break into a different voice there. Anyway, we'll move on. Another question. The pastor, it's funny how the discussion guide puts it up. Pastor Steve, you said that we sometimes treat people as scenery or machinery. And, I've heard you say that in the past, and it's such an impactful message on how we should view the people around us. What are some practical ways we can become more aware of the people around us who might need mercy?
I think we have to really make a decision to see. I mean, you have to decide that you want to see what God sees, and don't allow yourself to just distance people that you sort of encounter, because I always think I've used Winn-Dixie as a source material place forever, because you go through it, and a lot of people never, like, even walking through. I think maybe people think I'm strange. I say hello, to other, but as they're coming out, I try and get their eye and their attention and say hello and smile and just sort of make them, I see you, like that I see their existence. I didn't really take much, but it's something. And we sort of lost that. I think, I watch old movies and stuff and people all walking down the streets, tipping their hats and everything. I mean, there was that's kind of gone now in a lot of places. And then, so don't let people become just scenery. Just sort of understand. You have to tell yourself, these are people that have families and backstories and situations and lives, and, God cares for them. And if they aren't in relation with Him, He certainly wants them to be, and we need to be aware of all of that. And then the other thing I mentioned is other people we might notice, but they're the machinery people. And I said, like the cashiers and people who in Dixie like that, that oftentimes the only time people even notice them is if it's not going well. Mm-hmm. And then they take it out, on those folks. And it's like, again, people with backstories, people God loves, people with lives, people, that's their job. They're just trying to make it through the best that they can and do what they're supposed to do. And we really have to be aware of that instead of sometimes treating people as less than. I think I mentioned this the other day. I might have done it in the podcast. I don't remember, but when I was trying to get to know people like who were going to be on staff or something, other than having them clean the bathrooms, I would purposely go out to a restaurant and see how they treated the people that waited on them. Because you can learn a lot just from that. Don't tell them that's the test, but if they didn't treat them well, I'm like, okay, if you can tell if they're not, just how they treat those people. Like if they're part of the machinery, okay, then it's just not going to be what we want to do. We have a whole different thing going on.
Yeah.
So
You haven't really hired a full-time staff member in a while, so you probably don't have to do that part of the process as much. But yeah, that's a great, it's a great, easy, quick test, even for single people who are dating. If the person on the other side of the table, like that's a great, how are they treating everybody else? It's going to give you kind of a sign as to how they're going to treat you. So, yeah,
absolutely.
and that's an easy one. We all love eating out, and it is a wonderful thing having someone bring you a plate of
Yeah,
food that you've
yeah.
ordered, and cleaning up after you too.
And sometimes you just people have hard days, and
Mhm.
sometimes things are going well, and it's busy, and always opportunities to not get ourselves so in the center of the story that we can't see the bigger picture, right?
Well, we all want mercy when we're not having a good day. But we might just get hacked if someone else around us isn't having a good day and they're not living up to our standards. When we want judgment there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have to be mindful of that, and keep that in our hearts. Another thing I think happens with us not being merciful is just the impact social media's had on my generation and the generation younger. We're just tossed into categories, and we throw that, and you mentioned it, we label people, we just try to categorize them, and the internet does that to better sell things too. So I have to be cautious of that. These are all people on the other side of that phone screen that have lives, that have families, that matter to God. And yeah.
Yeah, and just because they have different opinions than you, so that's the thing. I know I've said it. I did a Bible study earlier today, and I said it again. Opinions have become this thing in our culture where they're valued more than people. And
Mhm.
I'm like, and that oftentimes people only want to hear your opinion. So, and if it doesn't agree with theirs, then you're done. They label you and you're out. And so they don't even care about your opinion
Mhm.
unless they just want to make sure it matches their opinion, which
Right.
is all that really they care about. And so these are really difficult things. At least that's my opinion.
I can agree with that opinion, and we'll keep talking. So I think everybody listening to this, that's a hard message to disagree with there. It's like, hey, we need to value people more than their opinions. But the natural inclination is to get angry.
Yeah.
And okay, I think we've got, oh, there's a couple more. You mentioned how Jesus said, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. What do you think this means for us, how we live out our faith today?
Yeah. And I brought that up because I've been, in the context that he gives it, it's about the the religious leaders of the day were having an issue with Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners. And he comes up and he in response he says, go. This is why it really impacted me, that particular. He said, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Because he's quoting from the Old Testament, Zephaniah or Zechariah, one of the two. I should know that offhand, but I don't. One of the Z books. And when he does that, at least I think it could be Jose. No, I'm pretty sure it's one of the Z books. When he says that, it's when Jesus says go and learn, it means you take some time and think about this. What was going on and what do you need to know, and let it sort of resonate with you. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I think he's saying we have to make sure we value people more than rules and regulations, and that we live in a tension though. And so it's okay, there are things that we should do and there are things that we shouldn't do. I'm never saying those aren't true, but we also have to value people. And we don't have to agree with everything that people are doing, but we need to love them so that if they haven't yet come to know Jesus, then they get some power to stop, and start moving in the right direction. So I think that's a pretty important thing. Are you looking up that verse? Is that what you went to do?
I was looking up something else. So no,
Well,
I wasn't.
I thought you were jumping on that as a good host, and you were you were on it.
No, no, I was looking at something else. I'm sorry. So anyway, thank you for throwing me under the bus there. Let's do this last
It's
question.
Hosea. I was
Hosea. Okay.
Hosea 6:6. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I need to get the new version of Logos here. Anyway, always something to get. Let's do this last question. We'll call it a day. How does understanding the mercy God has shown us motivate us to be merciful toward others?
And again, mercy, is dealing with the consequences of sin, things that we've done, and because we've all messed up so bad, we need to be, and yet have received the mercy of God, right? That He loves us and cares for us and hangs out with us, and Holy Spirit fills us. I mean, wow. As we grasp that, I think then we start to find room for others. Not that, I said something along the lines that mercy doesn't like erase truth, but it makes room for movement and hope and all those other things. But we have to. It's so hard for people to get tension, and it's all attention. We don't have to go. It's not always. It's somewhere in here with the Lord, and we need to hang out with him there, and that's where we find Him and sort of can move through these things. So when we get the idea of, wow, He's shown me so much mercy and continues to, then I can extend it to others. And like you said, tension, mercy looks differently in different situations. We've often talked in the past about there's the tender mercy. I think this is a Steve-ism of God that comes and you get an opportunity to respond to His tender mercy. And yet that if you don't, there's kind of this other mercy that comes.
Much more like a hammer.
Well, it's just different. And it's like, oh, I wish I did. I wish I would learn to respond to the tender mercy. And I think over time we do. We're like, wait. Let me go with that one.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's better.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah,
good stuff. It was a great message. And I'm looking forward to this upcoming weekend. I get the privilege to talk about Blessed are the Pure in Heart. So it's going to be good. But anyway, thank you all for listening. Join us Thursday for our Online Bible Institute Network podcast. And this weekend coming up with part 12. We're excited for it as we're approaching the Easter season coming up. So I've ordered my Easter ham. What about you, Dad?
I have not. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
I wish I had thought about it, but I haven't. Yeah. So it'll be
last year I ventured into making a lamb, and I had never made lamb before. And, everyone was like, you're probably not going to like it. I was like, I should try it. And I didn't like it. So ordered a ham. It's like, I like ham,
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, cool. That was a good one. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next time. God bless you.
Bye.